Okay, we're recording. So, welcome to the second session, mooting session. This is how to moot, and today we're gonna go through exactly what you have to do for this mooting competition. It's very clearly laid out in the rules, and if you have any questions about anything that we would have spoken about in the last session, um, I'll give you all a chance to ask questions afterwards. But if you have any questions about what I'm about to go, about what I'm going to go through, please raise your hand and interrupt me because I'd rather that we clear it up while I go through it rather than make you all wait to ask those questions at the end. So let's start off with the key dates. If I can just bring to your attention, the fact pattern was already distributed. You can access it in your emails. I believe it would, both the rules as well as the facts would have been sent to everybody's email, student email. It was also distributed in the year group chats. We already had our MOOC competition orientation. And then that was on Wednesday. It's recorded. You can access that on the YouTube channel from the faculty. And well, today's the How to Moot session. That's Friday the 13th. The next event that we're gonna have, it is not listed on the rules under the key dates, but I will be sending out a reminder in the group chats. On Monday, we will be having a bit of a mixer. So I know that quite a few of you have signed up as individuals and you haven't yet like found a partner or have found a team, even if you want to work in a group of more than two. So we'll be hosting a sort of like a little games night for you guys to attend and get to know each other. So that way you can probably see if there's anyone who you think you'd work well with or anything like that. So don't worry too much about entering individually. Of course, if by the end of the event, well, probably not the end of the event, but by the end of the day of the event, if you haven't found anybody, we will assign you. So you're definitely not going to be alone in this. But just indicate to me, please, if you'd like to be in a group of 2, 3, or 4, and we can see what we can work out. I can't guarantee that you'll be able to get in a group of, let's say, 4 people. It will really depend on what the other persons who are entering individually want, but I'll do my best to accommodate you guys. So the Thursday next week on the 19th of May, we'll be having the public international law information session. That will be where I go through a bit of the basics of public international law. As you all probably know, this fact pattern is very much based in international law. There's also kind of a new-ish area of law, which is data protection regulation that I've put in the fact pattern. So don't be too overwhelmed by that. I will be I will be going over it, and it's over the basics at least in that session. Then on the 20th of May, on Friday 20th, that will be the registration deadline. At 6 p.m., I will be closing off the sign up sheet. I know a lot of you have already signed up, but just ensure that all of your team members have signed up as well. If you haven't seen the messages in the group chat, if you're signing up as a group, every member of the group needs to fill out the form. So just ensure that that's done. Then on the 3rd of June, on Friday the 3rd, we will be having the memorial deadline at 8 p.m. That's the most exciting thing. So that means y'all only have like a couple of weeks to write your memorials. Then let's see. Then we have the oral competition commencing from the 13th of June to the 15th of June. So that means between 3rd of June and the 13th, you all have essentially 10 days to practice your oral sessions. The 13th of June will be the preliminary round, or rather the exhibition round. This round will not be scored, but the teams with the highest combined. Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. This round will be scored, and the teams with the highest combined written and oral scores will progress to the elimination rounds. So that is to say, even if you give a performance in your oral in the oral components of the competition that you're not necessarily happy with, you do have the chance to make it up with the points that you get in the written part, which is the memorials. So don't sleep on that. Memorials will definitely play a big part in whether or not you advance. I believe it is a 50-50 split usually. Then on the 14th of June, that's the Tuesday, we'll have the elimination rounds. This is where we decide which two teams will be proceeding to the final round, which will be on the Wednesday, 16th of June. Is that clear so far? Does anybody have any questions about the timeline that we're working with? Okay, great. So we're clear. Okay, so now let's go over the memorials. The memorials are worth 40 points. As you all know, you have to prepare a memorial both for the applicant and the respondent, and you have to submit them to me. Don't send me on WhatsApp, send it to me on my student email, please. The email is indicated in the rules document as well, so you can find it there. It has to be submitted in a Microsoft Word format, so no PDFs. The font size has to be the regular 12 points times New Roman. Footnotes have to be in 10 point times New Roman. And yes, memorials very much do have to have footnotes in them. Even though the fact pattern is kind of like a problem question, um, you still have to treat it as kind of similar to a research paper in that you're going to be going through like the different areas of law, and you will have to cite them. You can use articles as well. So it's not a matter of just finding the cases that yeah yeah, you'll definitely lose some marks if for improper school lab. By now y'all should be pros at it. But yeah, as I was saying, it's not a matter of just like finding a similar case and applying the ruling. So you're not necessarily going to be using IRAC in the way that you would use it for an exam question. Mooting is quite different. So definitely going to have a lot of footnotes in there. And the margin and spacing, it's very typical 1.15 spacing, regular margins. The case names should be underlined. The names of the parties have to be underlined and italicized. So not just at the top of not just on your cover page, you're also going to have whenever you put the applicant, whenever you put the applicant or respondent, you're gonna highlight it and be guided by the directions in the rules. Sources have to be formatted in a Schola. The length, okay, so we have several sections here. The statements of facts have to be 200 words at maximum. So for those of you who may not know, in every memorial, you are going to be required to write a statement of facts. So that's basically a summary of the fact pattern that you've been given. I know that it might seem like a simple thing. You just have to pick out the points that you think were, um, you know, important and write it like that. And we'll kind of like put everything in a concise manner. And that's not really the case. The statement of facts is kind of like the foundation that you're going to be laying for your pleadings. So the statement of facts is going, so, you know, if you're advocating for Gotham, right? The statement of facts that you write has to be kind of written in in a way where it's fair to what Gotham is trying to plead. And you know, if you're doing it for Metropolis, then you're going to have to do the same, right? It's in a manner that's a bit fair and accurate to what Metropolis has experienced. Now, the tricky part um, is that since y'all are writing two memorials, typically the statements of facts should be the same. So the statement of facts in your memorial for Metropolis and the statements of facts for your memorial for Gotham are going to be the same. And so it's up to you guys to write a statement of facts that is, I wouldn't say necessarily, I wouldn't say partial to one or the other side, but it must be written skillfully so that you can point to it from either side, either Metropolis or Gotham, and find some and be able to use the facts that you've written um, in a skillful manner to say, oh, well, look at this. And I have to be very careful not to pull out an actual example because I don't want to give anyone an unfair advantage. But I think you get the gist of what I mean. So, yeah. And I think that definitely um, writing out the statements of facts, it compels you to have to go through the entire thing and really see, okay, what here is an essential part of this problem, and what do I need to place focus on. So that should be fun for you guys. Um, then we also have a pleading section. So the pleading section is where you actually make your case. It is where you would write your submission. So in a moot competition, when you are speaking to the judges and making your case, we call that submissions. Um, in your memorial, they're written submissions, and these written submissions are called your pleadings. So um, your pleading section will also include your conclusion. So you're not going to have like a separate conclusion. So let's say the first ground had, let me not use that example, the actual fact pattern as an example, but let's say in a fact pattern, one of the first grounds had to do with entry restrictions. Um, for example, you know, with the pandemic, lots of countries would have implemented entry restrictions. Let's say in the fact pattern, one of the issues was whether these were lawful. So you're gonna have your first ground, and it will state exactly like what the ground is. Obviously, in favor of the country that you're advocating for. So let's say in my case, and this is from my fact pattern that I worked on, I would have said that Ranostayo's entry regulations were unlawful. The question put forth in the fact pattern was whether those were unlawful. But because I'm writing the memorial for Apropluia, the applicant, I would say that I would put conclusively in the pleadings, Ranostayo's entry regulations were unlawful. So that's the broad. I wouldn't. It's not heading. Like I don't want to use heading because you're not gonna put it in like 16-point fonts. It's like it's gonna be the same 12 points but in bold, right? You'll put ground one, the entry regulations were unlawful, and then underneath you will have multiple points. So let's say you have three main arguments. The entry regulations broke the um, World Trade Organization's regulations. It violated constitutional rights. It it broke the World Health Organization's regulations, right? So those are my 3 points. um, you're not writing your entire argument in like one body of work. You would separate it by those 3 points. So so you have your first broad sentence there is that it was unlawful, and then you'll put like A, and then your sub arguments in one sentence, 1 or 2 sentences maximum, but please try and make it one sentence, and then you'll have your body of work. That's where you'll put your paragraph, or two or three paragraphs, however much you want to write. Um, Under that. And so that's how you separate your arguments for your pleadings. Let's see, for your penalties, 2 points will be deducted for breach of any of the formatting requirements. I know that, formatting seems so simple because it's always like, oh, that's so easy. Obviously, I'm not gonna like mess that up, but if you don't pay special attention, sometimes it comes back to bite you. So make sure that your format is properly correct, because you don't want to lose marks that easily. Um, so always make sure you're using the right font. Make sure you've italicized and underlined your cases and what have you. So in the actual memorial, you will be having the cover page, the table of contents, the index of authorities, the statement of facts, and the pleadings, which includes your conclusion. So um, your index of authorities is similar to like a bibliography. Um, of course, for your index of authorities, it's not exactly similar to a bibliography. It is basically a list of all the authorities that you're using. Actually, it's kind of almost exactly like a bibliography, but I believe it's put in the order of which it's binding. I believe it's supposed to be alphabetical as well, but I can confirm that. I already told you all what a statement of facts is and what your pleadings are. The table of contents, I feel like that's pretty straightforward. Your table of contents is just gonna, oh, one thing that you should note, in your table of contents, you're not, when you put pleadings, you will also have like your subheadings as well. So pleadings, and that might be page 29, well, not 29, pleadings might be page 8. Then you'll have to put ground 1, page um, page 9, ground 2, page 10, ground 3, page 4, 11, and so on. So you have to indicate your grounds. You don't have to put the sub arguments for each ground in your table of contents, but you will be putting your grounds as well as, just the other things that belong in the table of contents. So your cover page has to have the name of your team members, the name of the court, the year of the competition, the name of the cases, the title of the document. Went through the table of contents, the list of the index of authorities. Sorry, it has to, again, basically what I said is you have to list all the legal authorities cited in any part of the memorial, and you have to indicate the page numbers of the memorial on which each is cited. Okay, so not exactly like a bibliography, because you have to put the page on which your authority is used. I believe that's it for the memorials. If you go on the rules as well on page 7, you can see that there's an example of what I was talking about with the pleadings. So you can check there for the proper format. For the oral wrongs now, so what typically happens is you will have a team of two, well, some of you might have teams of 3, some of you have teams of 4. Only 2 people are allowed to speak. Now, I will have to clarify on whether or not the speakers for each team can be interchangeable. I haven't received any communication that it can be so, but I will find out and get back to you guys on that. That being said, um, usually only two people from your team can be a speaker. So you have your first speaker and your second speaker. Now there's four grounds and four issues, sorry, in this competition. I'm sorry, in this fact pattern. So the first speaker will take the first two grounds. The second speaker will take the second set of grounds, which would be 3 and 4. Does that make sense? Because that's really crucial for you all to understand. Speaker 1 covers grounds 1 and 2, and speaker 2 covers grounds 3 and 4. Okay, great, you're clear on that. So you would do it for the applicant. The speakers for the applicant goes first speaker, then the second speaker. To which then the respondent speakers will go first speaker, then the second speaker, and the first speaker covering ground 1 and 2, second speaker covering ground 3 and 4. After the respondents go, then you have the rebuttal, and the rebuttal is done by the applicant team. Basically, for the, what they would do is, so even so for the applicant team, you are not done when you finish your pleadings, and you still have to listen very intently to what the respondent says and look for any holes in logic and be able to use that and point it out and say, oh well, they said this in their pleadings, but actually the correct point of law is this, or something to that effect. Then after we have the Sir rebuttal. The Sir rebuttal is where the respondent team rebuts the rebuttal. So the Sir rebuttal is not an opportunity for the respondent team to say to attack what the applicants had pled in the beginning. You are not noting down what the applicant said in the beginning when they first went to come back and talk about in the Sir rebuttal. You will lose marks for that because that is not the proper way. The Sir rebuttal is meant to be a response only to the rebuttal. If you want to attack something that the applicant said in their initial submissions, then you speak about that in your submissions. Your submissions is your time for you to be able to rebut what they said. But your rebuttal is not meant for you to go now and refute what they said in their submissions. Your rebuttal is only supposed to be used for used to respond to what they said in their rebuttal. That is your opportunity to clarify what you would have said or anything that they might have accused you of doing. That's your opportunity to say, well, actually, no, that even though that is a point of law, it's not applicable because of X, Y, and Z. So for this competition specifically, the submissions will go on for 6 minutes per speaker. The rebuttal now will be for 2 minutes for if it is that both the first speaker and the second speaker wants to go, or 4 minutes. It's totally up to you guys to decide whether or not you want to split the 4 minutes or if you just want to let one speaker go. Some judges prefer only one speaker to speak because it's a better flow of information. Some judges may want to hear both speakers speak. But I would advise, based on your comfort level, you should make that decision. But also consider that if you're sending only one person to speak for the whole 4 minutes, they need to know all 4 grounds in and out. Like, because they will have to, because I believe that judges are allowed to ask you questions during your rebuttal and rebuttal. And if you're making a point about, let's say, the 4th ground and you're the first speaker, and which means you only did the first and second grounds, and you're making a point about the 4th ground, which is your partner's territory, and the judges ask you a question on it, you better be able to answer. So that's something that you also need to take into consideration. To avoid that, you could let 2 speakers do the rebuttal. That way, both of you can be confident that you know exactly what you're talking about and you're not saying nonsense. But I've seen both only one person doing the rebuttal and two people splitting the rebuttal. There's not really like I wouldn't say that one has more of an advantage than the other. It really depends on the people and how well they know what they need to say. Um, so during the 6 minutes of the speaking time that you have, I'm sure that most of you would be well acquainted with mooting. You will when you are making your submissions, the judges are fully allowed to interrupt you at any point and ask you as many questions as they want. And trust me, they will. Um, Judges will definitely ask you questions. They're allowed to ask about anything. They don't need to just ask you about the fact pattern. They can ask you about like points of international law. For example, they might just ask you, counsel, what's custom? And you'll have to answer that. So you need to have like a good knowledge of public international law. I mean, very rarely will a judge ask you a question about international law that's completely unrelated to what you're pleading. Um, what I meant when I said counsel what's custom, like if you're saying that a certain authority should be a certain principle should be used because it's custom, I'm saying that the judges can ask you, well, counsel, what is custom? Define that. Why is custom relevant here? So in that context, they're allowed to ask you something that's not necessarily related to what you're saying. It might be completely like and it might not even be something that's like the crux of your pleadings. I remember one time I was making a point and and I can't even remember exactly what I was saying, but the judge just asked me, counsel, what's state practice? And I was like, can you repeat that? Like I didn't know what state practice was at the time, and I was completely unprepared for that because I was so focused on trying to say what I wanted to say that I didn't take the time to think, oh, well, if I'm saying that this needs to be applied, I should probably know like what other countries are applying this, which that is state practice. State practice is basically like examples of where other countries have used a certain, adopted a certain practice in law or something like that. But you get the gist. Judges are allowed to ask you anything they want during the submission, so better be prepared for that. I'm not sure if all of you are aware of it, but there's something called a hot bench and a cold bench. In mooting, we refer to it as a hot bench when the judges continuously and repeatedly ask you questions and like they don't give you a chance to speak on your own. Like they keep asking you questions. Um, and they kind of like never let you finish. And then a cold bench is where the judges don't ask you questions at all, not a single one. A lot of people say that a cold bench is a bad sign or a bad omen because it means like, oh, this judge is completely turned off to what I'm saying. They're not listening to me. They don't really care what I have to say because I'm talking nonsense. That's not necessarily true. Some judges are just naturally quiet in that they want to hear what you're saying. And sometimes it might be that what you're saying is so engaging that they don't actually have anything to question you on because you've been correct thus far. So they haven't like found an opportunity to catch you in a slip up. Um, so yes, that is basically what is required for of you for this. Um, do you have any questions so far on what mooting is? You can raise your hand or drop a comment in the chat. Okay, no questions. All right. So, what to expect when mooting? Now, As I would have said before, you do not need to be like a necessarily confident, extroverted, well-spoken person. Just one second. I see a question. Are there any examples online that we can see what an actual moot is like? Um, I do believe that our faculty has an archive of the CCJ moots. We will have to find it, but I can reach out to faculty and see if we have any of that footage and provide it to you guys. Um, that being said, I'm sure there's lots of videos on YouTube. I think there's like a really popular one that everyone seems to find of a. It's like an hour long video though of a moot competition. So yeah, there's definitely videos online that you can look at to see what Mooting is like. But personally, I don't find them helpful. I didn't find them helpful um, because I think that you can't really learn anything from it if you're not like acquainted with the law that they're talking about, if you don't have the fact pattern on hand or anything like that. I mean, some things you can pick up like certain phrases or certain maneuvers that you might see mooters adopt in answering questions or things like that. It might be helpful, but I would say that the best way to practice is to I'm sorry, the best way to excel is to practice. Um, Tons and tons and tons of practice. For almost every moot team that I've coached, we've practiced like every single day for a week, 2 weeks sometimes. It depends on the competition. Most recently for the CCJ moot, we were practicing every single day for 2 weeks, I believe. And sometimes we practice twice a day. It's just that level of dedication that you'd need. Um, and with practicing as well, I would say in the first couple of practices that you do with your partners, um, don't put a time limit. Let them ask you all the questions that they need to ask you, because being asked those questions are how you're going to realize, oh, okay, I need to be more clearer in this so that they don't ask, so that I don't waste time for them to ask me and I'll have to answer that. Um, Sometimes it's also helpful for you and your partner to kind of practice with each other. And what I mean by that is, okay, so one of you is acting as the speaker and one of you acts as the judge. And so one of you grills the other with a ton of questions, like a judge would. That way, the person that is acting as a judge gets better insight on what a judge is going to be thinking. Like you would see, oh, well, and sometimes they might be like, oh, well, I actually did not notice that that was something that you didn't address. So maybe when I'm doing my submissions, I should adopt this strategy and I should talk about this. So a lot of practice is how you'll do well for the oral advocacy part. Um, Also, when practicing with your questions, one thing that I really need to drive with you guys, because it happens a lot with everybody. When a judge asks you a question, don't pause for them to tell you to keep talking. Um, that's just unnecessary. It disrupts the flow, and judges aren't a fan. Like a lot of judges will just sit there and wait until you speak, and they won't even tell you anything because it's not really something that's done in Mooting. You just answer the question and press, and you can also use the question very skillfully, depending on the question, obviously, but most times you can. Like a judge will ask you a question, um, and you need to use that as a segue. For example, they might ask you, okay, well, if you're saying that, and I'll use the fact pattern this time. Let's say that, let's say that Metropolis was, um, did break international law in returning Justice Gary a, into Hive, but wasn't that um, because they were under the threat of Hive's wrath, as they say. Um, that's a legitimate question that could be asked, and you need to be able to say, well, yes, they were under the threat. However, it's still unlawful because, and you go on and provide your reasoning or whatever like that. You could say, actually, Your Excellency, that's thank you for the question. That actually, I actually, um, well, well, don't use the word actually. That's a bad habit of mine. I use actually a lot, but you can say, well, Your Excellency, in fact, this principle in international law guides specific situations like that. And then you can use that to make your next point and your next point and so on. So that's another thing too. Don't write a speech. Do not do that. That is a recipe for disaster. Do not practice like your full sentence. Do not practice full sentences and everything. Like, don't recite your submissions. That is the worst thing that you could do if you want to do well. The best thing to do is write bullet points, write down a roadmap, say, okay, I want to get across X, Y, and Z in 6 minutes. And that's why the research aspect of your memorial is so important. Some things you might not actually end up using in your memorial, but it's still like imperative that you know this, like that you're aware, you're cognizant of certain principles or certain cases. Um, you need to be able to be aware of that because you need to be able to talk kind of off the top of your head. You need to be able to think on your feet. If you prepare a speech, the judges are going to definitely 100% interrupt you with a question, and it will throw you off because you didn't prepare for any breaks in your little speech, and then you will not be able to get back to the point where you were at, and you will be flustered and you will stumble your way until the time is up. So don't do that. Prepare bullet points. Personally, I will just put it in one sentence. I'll put in one sentence the ground and list my authorities, and then just kind of talk about them a bit off the cuff and say, okay, well, this first ground is this. I'm using this authority, and then I talk about the authority, and then I talk about the next authority, and so on. So you don't want to prepare a speech. You want to prepare a map, a roadmap, bullet points, things like that. Do not prepare a full rehearsed speech. That is not going to that might actually lead to your downfall, honestly, in Mooting. Mooting is something where thinking on your feet is essential. Um, Other than that, that is pretty much all of the advice I have, and I've went through everything I've needed to. So, do you all have any further questions about either the memorials or the oral advocacy part? Please ask me now. Okay. Will there be a document outlining what is required in the memorial? So yes, that document is the rules. The rules would have been sent to your UE student email as well as circulated in the year group chats. And I believe it's in the Moot competition competitors group chat as well, but I will send it again because you probably joined afterwards. But yes, the rules of the competition outlines the key dates as well as everything that's required in the memorial, as well as how the oral advocacy will be scored. Um, and Dr. Prue has been kind enough to even provide a couple examples for how your pleading should be in your memorial. So you're all set there. And of course, you guys will also be matched with advisors for your advisors for your memorial. They are allowed to give you feedback. You can run things by them so that you can ensure that it's being done right. They're there to help you, and there's no limit on how much help they can offer. With the memorial, it's up to their discretion. However, for the oral advocacy part, you're only allowed 2 practice sessions with your with your oral advocacy advisors. I explained before that this is to prevent an unfair advantage. We don't want a situation where one advisor is super, super helpful and another advisor is really busy, so they can't like provide that much time to their team. So 2 is the cutoff. My advice is do not meet with your advisor for the oral advocacy until you're confident that a little confident at least in in your submissions, until you've made that roadmap that you need to do so that you can successfully get through the submissions and you'll be able to reach the end, and you'll be at least be able to answer the questions that your judges that your advisor would ask you. That being said, uh, that would be the end of this session. It was a bit of a short session today because there's not really much to go over. Things are pretty straightforward since Dr. Peru has prepared such a helpful um, rules document, which outlines everything that you need to do. So don't worry, and also don't forget to sign up if you haven't. And the mixer will be on Monday at 5 p.m. I will resend all the rules and all the and the fact pattern as well into the chat for the competitors. If you haven't joined the chat for the competitors or interested people, you don't have to have been signed up to join the chat. If you're interested and want to attend all the events and receive all the links, I advise that you also join the chat, and you can leave if you decide you don't want to do this anymore. But yes, please do join the chat because I will be sending the link to this recording when it's uploaded to YouTube as well. So you can sign up even if, yeah, of course, you can 100% sign up even if you don't have a partner. We will assign one to you, or alternatively, you can come to the mixer on Monday evening and see if there's anybody there who you would like to be partners with. It's a chance for you to, at the very least, make some friends before you'll likely return to campus, although that's unconfirmed, I'm not sure, but fingers crossed, maybe. So yes, but that is it, guys. I'm going to stop the recording now.